Joining me now on Sports Talk ATL, Big Low Country. Coming off an exhilarating win over the Bucks and the Saints, last second victories. The Falcons are in sole possession in first place after 5 weeks. And I think, Big Low, this was the first time I was able to sit back on Sunday and just take it all in. Like, you know what? Falcons ain't playing. We had a victory Friday. It was nice to have that relaxing feeling, knowing no matter what happens, the Falcons are going to be in first place.
Man, you gotta love it, man. As a matter of fact, I scheduled my doctor's appointment intentionally on Monday because I knew my blood pressure would be down because we didn't have a game on Sunday. So I went to the doctor's like, man, you're doing a good job, Big Low. Keep doing what you're doing. I was like, I wish the Falcons didn't play on Sundays, but look, man, I'm loving it, bro. I'm loving it.
Yeah, and what we saw against the Bucks in particular was finally what we expected to see from Kirk Cousins. And it seems like each week by week, like I remember weeks 1 and 2, it almost seemed like he was a little gun shy in the pocket. And then he had that amazing drive against the Eagles to win that game. And ever since then, it feels like his confidence going out routes across the field, down the field, it seems like that's there. And we've been waiting for this explosion, and he let it rip. And man, those weapons that we talked about, the Darnell Mooney, who's been a stud since the signing, Drake London, big game, Kadarius Hodge, game winning. We finally saw all these weapons that we've been talking about come to fruition, and this offense looked like what we expected before the season.
I know it, man. It's like, and the crazy thing is that, you stop, but if you kept going, the Ray McLeods, we seen there was a Kyle Pitts sighting. We seen a unicorn, it's crazy.
I think, listen, you can complain about kind of how Terry Fontenot is drafted, and I'm not going to argue it there. I'm right there with you about a lot of these draft picks over the last 4 years. But one thing you cannot complain about is the pro personnel side of things. Jesse Bates, this guy makes a game-changing play. And most of the time, every time the Falcons win, it seems like he has a game-changing play. Justin Simmons has been great. Matthew Judon, maybe a little underwhelming. Still the team's best pass rusher by far. Darnell Mooney, people were saying, oh, this guy's overpaid. This guy might be wide receiver 1. That pass he had to Darnell Mooney into like triple coverage, back shoulder, touchdown. That's showing trust in a guy that they just started working together. Like we might have something special with that guy.
Man, I know it, man. And you remember, this is the guy that Kirk Cousins said he wanted. So it's like, Kirk Cousins knew what he was capable of doing with them. And look, Thursday night showed, because he went off.
Yeah. And Ray McLeod too. You mentioned him, but that guy has been a good little scat option, especially on third downs. It seems like he's always finding the soft spot in the zone or something over the middle of the field that's easy. And he's definitely built some trust. One guy I did want to talk about, Ruka Rororo, finally gets his first, start. Are the Falcons? I swear, even though we win, I have to say, why has this guy, considering everybody on the defensive line, we haven't had a pass rush. We've had a lot of troubles topping the run, which we didn't expect coming into the season based on previous seasons with Onyemata and Jarrett healthy. Why has this guy not been playing? Because he came in and immediately made an impact. The Bucks were running the ball a little bit. This guy comes in. Bucks couldn't run the ball anymore. He may not be the pass rusher right now at this point in his career, but he can already give the Falcons a lot in the run game.
He's definitely an anchor. And I'm thinking that it kind of goes back to what Raheem Morris said at the beginning of the season, whenever he said, hey, man, we're here to outrun the South. So I feel like he's thinking about it long term instead of thinking about it being a sprint and just putting all your top draft picks in there, off the top. So, giving Rook a chance to sit behind a Grady Jarrett, sit behind a David Onyemata and watch what these guys do on game days, not just on practice, but on game days, and see how they approach the game, see what happens whenever they come back to the sideline, what they talk about and how they communicate. Then 5 games in, put them in there. I feel like he's thinking about things. So, I think he's running a marathon and not a sprint in that regard.
Yeah, and when you really look at this Falcon season, it is a marathon and not a sprint. I think what's intriguing is we looked at the back half of this schedule, right? We were kind of like, okay, Commanders, pretty like you're almost penciling wins and losses for the season. Now the Commanders and the Vikings look like they might be two of the best teams in the NFC, which is why you can never look in the NFL ahead of the season and start penciling wins and losses because you just never know. I mean, Jaden Daniels, obviously me and Alex isn't here, but we both went to LSU. We knew what he was capable of. I don't think anyone thought he was going to be this good this early. And then Sam Darnold's having a revelation with the Minnesota Vikings. So that schedule doesn't look as easy. But still, they went through a gauntlet here in this first 5 games and coming out 3-2. I mean, you have to feel I almost want to say relieved, but I'm just excited, man. Like you get the Panthers coming up, got to take care of business this weekend. And this is the game. Every game has been on pins and needles, like, your butthole's clenched, whatever you want to say. Like it's been tough. And this is the game that you're hoping to see. All right, Kirk Cousins, can you build off that monster, historic career performance and just crush the Panthers and show, hey, we're here, we're really contenders.
I mean, look, you're definitely right. I mean, but there's one thing that we do have to remember is like, at the end of the day, they're still a divisional rival. So they're 1-4. They've had a taste of success, a couple of games ago. They're going to be fiending for that again. So I mean, who else better to do it to than the team that they really hate? But we're just kind of like, hey, y'all are cool on our side. I feel like that's a scary situation. Whenever you have a team who really doesn't like you, but you're like, I mean, y'all are just the Panthers. It's one of them situations where you put yourself in a successful situation.
Yeah, I mean, especially coming off 2 emotional victories. I mean, we just said this whole 5-week has been a gauntlet. I mean, you could literally look at it. The Falcons could be 5-0 right now. They could also be 0-5. I mean, every game has come down to the last possession, and every game has been nerve-wracking. And I think a lot of people overlook the kind of toll 2 divisional games and then going into a 3rd divisional game, particularly on the road. I think we've only had 1 road game to this point in the season against the Eagles. So there's a lot there. And I've seen some stats around this season, and I don't know if you have as well. One of the things that's really plagued the Panthers in the past has been just a dreadful offensive line. I mean, we talked about it last year with Bryce Young. They're actually one of the better teams in pass protection this year for whether it's Bryce Young or Andy Dalton, no matter. And Chuba Hubbard is really developing something as a running back out there and getting a lot of things going in that aspect. And when you think about what the Falcons have struggled with this year, right, it's kind of not an advantageous matchup. They've been run on a little bit. We might get Nate Landman back. That could be huge for the run game. But they've also been, had trouble getting sacks. So that's a little intriguing kind of matchup to watch this week. And I think that the offensive line versus that defensive line.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's advantageous to a certain extent to the Panthers, for the Panthers. But it's one of them situations, man. Any given Sunday, we could come out here and legitimately, get 3-4 sacks on them. I mean, remember whenever we played the Saints and they had 2 offensive linemen that were out and, one who's not that good, everybody was like, oh man, this is our chance to go in here and get 4 or 5 sacks. And I mean, that didn't happen. So, yeah. I mean, it's literally any given Sunday. There could be something that could click and, they say, oh, well, look at here. I mean, if we run these loopers to the weak side, we might be able to get them. And, that could kind of throw them off their game. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, you talk about any given Sunday, and before we hopped on here, we're talking about any given Saturday in college football. I mean, the emotional wins over the Saints and the Bucks, how does that affect you going to the lowly Carolina Panthers? I can't help but think about the emotional win Alabama had over Georgia. They walk into sleepy little Vandy where it's not even really a home field advantage. I'm sure there'll be a lot of Falcons fans in Carolina, as there always are, and not that many Panthers fans, but it's kind of a similar situation, right? You're like, you can't overlook this team, especially in the NFL. And I think this is where you find out about a guy like Raheem Morris, right? Like he's proven that the culture's changing in these close games and he's getting that Dan Quinn-itis or Arthur Smith-itis in late game situations out of this organization. But now you got to take care of business against a bad team, keep your team focused and make sure that you go in there and get a W and don't slip up here because you got a chance to build on this lead.
Exactly. That's whenever you determine which teams are really good. Whenever you win the games that you're supposed to win, and when we say win definitively, win by a touchdown or more. I think we're like 5.5 point advantage on this one. We should win by a touchdown, but this is where you determine what the true mentality of this team is.
Yeah. And I think, I hope, I don't know. I know they just, opened up his 21-day window talking about Nate Landman. And then you talk about this pass rush. And I keep thinking, if there's one area of this team that if they can just get a little bit better, whether it's internally or externally at the trade deadline, if this defensive line can get better at stopping the run and get a little more pressure on the quarterback, the Falcons might really have something brewing. One aspect of that is getting Landman back. He's great against the run, but it also frees up Caden Ellis to be that more of a Swiss Army knife that we've seen. I mean, he might be outside of Matthew Judon, the best pure pass rusher on the team. I mean, I don't
No
think
doubt.
that's that ridiculous to say,
No doubt.
unless you want to throw Grady Jarrett or David Onyemata. So allowing him to free up every time they seem to bring him on simulated pressures off the edge, it seems like he's able to get some pressure. I think Nate Landman and obviously getting Troy Anderson back will really help them kind of free up Caden Ellis. That'll help. But what about the trade deadline? I mean, do you see the Falcons? They've cleared up a lot of cap space. Do you see them being aggressive and really going for it, like we saw with Judon trade and Justin Simmons?
I mean, I can see it. I know the name that I've been seeing on X and on Facebook everywhere is everybody talking about Devontae Adams, but I think we're good as far as
Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney saying we good, man.
We good. Show me the Mooney. Yes, we good. But I mean, yeah, if you do go out and get someone, I would believe it would be a pass rusher. But it's one of those things where it's like, well, is it the Jimmys and Joes or is it the X's and O's?
Yeah.
I'm
I want to say it's the Jimmys and Joes, and that is the defensive personnel. But you're right. I mean, Jimmy Lake, we don't really know too much about him. I want to leave you with one last question, and this is just an opinionated question. What's been the most impressive aspect of this, 5-game stretch for you, the Falcons? Is it Kirk Cousins finally busting out, Raheem Morris building a different culture and finally getting the monkey off your back and winning games you're not supposed to, kind of flipping the script? Or is it a particular player, maybe a Jesse Bates or something like that?
I think the most impressive thing is just the offense and Kirk Cousins, especially with what we've had to deal with the last few years at the quarterback position. It's just refreshing to be able to get the ball and drive down the field and score.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a long time, especially at the end of the games. I think Alex has written it multiple times on the site. The Falcons last year, when they were trailing in the fourth quarter, 2-10. This year, already 3-2. And very easily, if Kyle Pitts gets a call in the end zone, could be 4-1 and those kind of situations. And that's something that's incredibly refreshing to see, I think, from the Atlanta Falcons after what we saw with Desmond Ridder and Arthur Smith.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just wrapping it up, man. So if you had one more thing to say, go ahead.
Nah, we good, Bo. Rise up. Man.
Yeah, rise up. Really appreciate you joining me again. We'll look forward to seeing you, hopefully, on another victory. I guess we can call it Tuesday since you usually come on Tuesdays. But thanks so much for joining us, Big Low.
All right, man. What in the world, Bo?
Yeah.